There are moments in sport that stop you completely. You're scrolling through your phone, half paying attention, and then something catches your eye and suddenly you can't look away. That's what Alex Eala did to the tennis world in Berlin. Not gradually. Not slowly building over a couple of rounds until people started paying attention. She grabbed the sport by the collar for match 1 and refused to let go until she had done something that no Filipino tennis player had ever done in the history of professional tennis. Reached a WTA 500 final. 4 matches. 4 top 20 opponents. 4 victories. Each one bigger than the last. Each one more jaw-dropping than the one before it. And the whole time, in the stands, 25,000 people were watching with this mixture of disbelief and pure electric joy that you almost never see at a tennis tournament. The Philippine flags waving. The chants ringing out across a historic German stadium that had seen some of the greatest players in the history of this sport walk through its gates. And in the middle of it all, a 21-year-old from Quezon City who had arrived in Berlin as a wild card, ranked 35th in the world, with nothing to lose and absolutely everything to gain. Let me take you through this from the very beginning, because the full picture of what Eala pulled off in Berlin only hits you properly when you understand exactly who she was playing, exactly what was at stake in each match, and exactly how close this entire run came to unraveling on multiple occasions before she found a way through. The week before Berlin, Eala had just won the Birmingham Open, a WTA 125 event, her second title at that level. The final was a grinding, exhausting 3-setter against Nikola Bartankova that went to 5-7, 6-3, 7-5, and the reason that victory mattered beyond the trophy was the fact that it snapped a 13-match losing streak against Czech players. 13 matches. That's not a rough patch. That's a genuine psychological hurdle, the kind that starts to feel like a wall rather than a losing streak, the kind that can define how a player sees themselves against a certain type of opponent. She broke through it in Birmingham, climbed to a career-high ranking of 33, and then the Berlin wild card landed in her lap. WTA 500 level. The highest tournament she had ever entered. And the draw gave her Donna Vejic in the first round. Now if you know anything about what was happening in women's tennis during the grass court season of 2026, you know that Donna Vejic was one of the hottest players on the entire tour. The 29-year-old Croatian had just done something genuinely extraordinary at Queen's Club. She had entered that tournament as a lucky loser, meaning she only got into the main draw because another player withdrew. Most lucky losers quietly lose in the first round and go home. Vejic did the opposite. She dismantled the field, beat a former US Open champion, a former world number 1, a former British number 2, and then won the final against Emma Raducanu to claim her first WTA 500 title. The first lucky loser to win a WTA 500 since 2023. Her ranking rocketed from 76 to 33. She arrived in Berlin on a 6-match grass court winning streak, full of confidence, playing some of the best tennis of her career. She was supposed to be the one doing the dismantling. Instead, what happened was one of those first-round matches that sets the tone for an entire tournament. Vejic broke Eala early in the first set, racing ahead to a 2-love lead. The Philippine flags in the stands went quiet. The chants that had been building since the warm-up faded into nervous murmuring. For a brief moment, it felt like this might be the short story, the wild card who played well for a game or two before the level difference became too obvious. And then Eala just started playing. She won 4 consecutive games from 2-love down to lead 4-2. Her left-handed angles, which would become the defining weapon of her entire Berlin campaign, were already doing damage, pulling Vejic wide, creating openings, taking away the Croatians' preferred patterns. But Vejic is experienced enough not to roll over. She fought back, won 3 straight games, and suddenly led 5-4, 1 game away from the first set. The crowd held its breath. The flags barely moved. And then Eala did something that every great player has to be able to do at some point. She held her nerve in the biggest moment of the set. She broke Vejic's serve in the 11th game and served it out to take the opener 7-5. 63 minutes for 1 set. By the time the second set was done, Eala had extended her head-to-head record over Vejic to 3 wins from 0 losses. The final score 7-5, 6-4, and she had sent the first message of the tournament. She was not here to fill a spot in the draw. She was here to win matches. The next message was significantly louder. Elena Rybakina, world number 2, reigning Australian Open champion, 2022 Wimbledon winner. A player with a serve so heavy and accurate that it routinely ends rallies before they begin. a player who had been one of the 2 or 3 best performers in women's tennis across the previous 3 years. This was not a match that Eala was supposed to win. Even the most optimistic Filipino fan watching from Manila at whatever ungodly hour the local time difference demanded would have been hoping for a close, competitive showing, a few good moments, maybe a set, something to be proud of even in defeat. What they got instead was something completely different. Rybakina came out in that first set and played like the world number 2 she was. She raced to a 4-1 lead. Her serve was producing aces at a relentless pace. She was winning over 80% of her first serve points, and when you're doing that against almost any player in the world, you win. The stadium had gone quiet again. The flags were still. And then, for the second time in the tournament, Eala found something. She clawed back from 4-1 down to level the set at 4-all. She absorbed the heavy hitting, stayed patient, waited for Rybakina's second serve, and when the opportunities came, she took them. The left-handed angles that had frustrated Vaik in round 1 were even more effective here. Rybakina is built for power. Exchanges, for big, flat ground strokes, for hitting through the court. Eala's angles don't give you that. They pull you wide, they create awkward positions, they force you to generate your own power from bad situations. At 5-5, Eala pounced. She broke Rybakina's serve and served out the first set 7-5. The crowd was beginning to understand that something unusual was happening. The second set was tighter, but the pattern was the same. Eala consistently targeted the second serve, winning over 70% of those points across the match, converting 3 of her 7 breakpoint chances. Rybakina had 13 aces in the match. 81% of her first serves landed. By any statistical measure, that's a dominant serving performance. But it wasn't enough, because every time the first serve didn't land, Eala was there. The final score 7-5, 6-4, 1 hour and 32 minutes. And then Eala did something that lodged itself in the memory of everyone who saw it. She called her father on center court. Right there, in the middle of the celebration, she got him on the phone and just started screaming with joy. She told journalists afterward, "I just said, 'Oh my God,' over and over. We were screaming together." That moment mattered. Not because it was particularly dramatic or cinematic, but because it was completely genuine. This was a 21-year-old kid who had just beaten the world number 2 for the first time in her career, and her first instinct was to call her dad and scream about it. The tennis world saw that and fell a little bit in love. The quarterfinals brought Elena Svitolina, world number 8, 6th seed. A former world number 3 who had accumulated 20 WTA titles over the course of a career that had included deep runs at every Grand Slam, victories over virtually every great player of her generation, and a comeback from pregnancy that had added another layer to an already remarkable story. She had won the Italian Open just weeks earlier. She arrived in Berlin having dropped only 5 games across her first 2 matches. Her winning percentage on tour in 2026 was tied for 3rd best among all players. On paper, this was the match where the run ended, where a genuine veteran with 20 titles and years of big match experience would walk Eala through a very educational lesson about the difference between beating good players and consistently competing at the highest level. Instead, Eala broke Svitolina's serve in the second game and built a 3-love lead inside the first 33 minutes. The Ukrainian is famous for her precision and consistency, for never giving you anything cheap, for making you earn every point through sustained pressure. And still Eala was finding ways through, still the left-handed angles were creating problems, still the lefty serve was pulling wide and opening up the court for winners down the line. Svitolina fought back to 4-3 in the first set. She broke Eala's serve in the 7th game, and the match felt like it might be turning. Eala broke straight back in the 8th game and served out the set 6-3. The second set went to a grinding marathon first game, 18 points before Eala secured the break. She went up 2-love. Svitolina leveled at 2-all, and then Eala broke again in the 5th and 7th games to lead 5-2. Svitolina pulled it back to 5-4, and for a moment, with Eala serving to stay in the match, the atmosphere tightened again. But she held. A backhand winner to seal it, 6-3, 6-4, 1 hour and 23 minutes, and Eala was in a WTA 500 semifinal for the first time in her career. After the match, the words she used to describe Svitolina were striking. She talked about watching her since childhood, about finding her to be a woman of elegance and strength, about what it meant to compete against someone like that. There was no bravado in it. No sense of someone trying to make a statement. Just genuine admiration from a 21-year-old who understood exactly what she had just accomplished. And then came the match that carried extra weight for reasons that went beyond the scoreboard. Linda Noskova, world number 13, 8th seed, and the player who had beaten Eala at Indian Wells just 3 months earlier, not in a close match, not in a battle that could have gone either way, but 6-2, 6-love. In 55 minutes. That's a scoreline that leaves marks. 6-2, 6-love means you didn't win a set, you barely won a game, and the match was over in less time than it takes to watch 2 episodes of a television show. That result had stayed with Eala. You could hear it in how she talked about the Noskova semifinal in the days leading up to it. She mentioned preparing specifically for this match. She mentioned making improvements. She mentioned wanting to show what she'd got. This wasn't just another match on the way to a final. This was personal in the quiet, professional way that athletes carry losses around with them. Berlin was the chance to answer a question that had been sitting in her chest since California. And from the very first point of that semi-final, the answer was emphatic. Eala played with a freedom and an authority that she hadn't shown in quite the same way in any of the previous 3 matches. The left-handed angles that had been so effective all week were even sharper here. Noskova's ground strokes, which had blasted Paula Badosa off the court 6-1, 6-3 in the quarterfinals, suddenly looked like they were landing into a wall. Every time the Czech found a good position and loaded up for a winner, Eala had redirected the ball to a spot that made the winner impossible. 6-2, 6-4. Eala avenged the most lopsided defeat of her professional career. She advanced to the final. She became the first Filipino tennis player in history to reach a WTA 500 final. And when the final point landed, she dropped to her knees on the grass, buried her face in her hands, and stayed there for a moment that felt like it lasted a long time. 25,000 people were standing. The Philippine flags that had been waving all week were waving harder than ever. The chants were the loudest they'd been at any point in the tournament. And in that moment, the full weight of everything she had done in a single week landed all at once. She had beaten Vajek, who was riding one of the best streaks of her career. She had beaten Rybakina, the world number 2 and a former Wimbledon champion. She had beaten Svitolina, a 20-title veteran who had just won in Rome. She had beaten Noskova, the player who had dismantled her 3 months earlier in straight sets in under an hour. 4 top 20 players. 4 matches. All in 1 week. On grass. As a wild card. And she was only 21 years old. The final against Linda Noskova, who as we covered in our previous video would go on to defeat her 6-2, 6-4, did not take away from what had been built in those 4 matches. Because sometimes a story isn't about the last chapter. Sometimes a story is about what someone reveals about themselves across a week, across 4 opponents, across 100 moments where they could have flinched and didn't. Eala revealed in Berlin that she is not a promising young player who might be a contender one day. She is a contender right now. The ranking jump from 35 to 27 confirms it. The Wimbledon seed confirms it. The 9 wins from 10 grass court matches this season confirm it. But honestly, none of those numbers tell the story as well as the matches themselves do. The way she came back from 4-1 down against the world number 2. The way she held her nerve at 5-4 in the first set against Vajek. The way she broke back immediately when Svitolina leveled it in the second set. The way she handled the weight of the Noskova rematch and turned a painful memory into a statement of intent. That is what a contender looks like. The grass court season isn't finished. Wimbledon is waiting. The All England Club, Centre Court, the biggest Grand Slam stage on the planet, and Alex Eala will walk through those gates as a seeded player for the first time in her career. Not a wild card. Not someone hoping to cause an upset in round 1 before heading home. A seeded player. Someone the rest of the draw has to account for. And based on what she showed in Berlin, based on how her game translates to the surface, based on the fact that she went 9-1 on grass this season with wins over a former Wimbledon champion and 4 top 20 players, the rest of the draw is right to account for her. Berlin was not a fluke. Berlin was not a one-week miracle that burns bright and then disappears. Berlin was an announcement. And Wimbledon is where the next chapter gets written.